Good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. Welcome to this thing that I do called Thor's Entertainment. I am Thor, and today I am doing part 2 of the Season 2 Invasions mode. In the previous episode, I played through almost the entire Invasions mode with the exception of about a level and a half. Right now we are working our way through the Tarkatan colony to try and get to the final stage of this mode. Speaking of this mode, what is it? What is going on? Why are we playing it? Well, Invasions mode is the Mortal Kombat mode where we have alternate dimension versions of main roster characters invading and trying to conquer the world or exterminate everybody or just some crap like that. Just imagine any supervillain motivation and it's probably going to be, one of them. So we are going after the alternate dimension version of the vampire Nitara. Now the alternate version of Nitara from the other dimension, she is here to, I guess, use us as a food source? And along the way, she's using some sort of a blood curse, blood infection, blood virus, blood something to take control of our allies. Some examples would include Raiden, Sindel, Melina, and Kitana. Actually, as I say that out loud, she got the entire Outworld royal family. I don't know what they have done to this alternate dimension version of Nitara, but she was not having it, she was over it, and she said, fuck the royalty. Anywho, not a whole lot has happened throughout the Invasions mode because it's not that deep of a mode when you get right down to it. Basically, we're just fighting hundreds of nameless enemies and trying to work our way to mini bosses and stage bosses. We beat them and then we progress on to the next level. So yeah, there's not really too much of a story to what we are trying to do. We are just trying to progress all the way to the big bad boss who has something of a motivation that's kind of only slightly hinted at. Normally it's in the form of these cool little animated cutscenes. They are probably the biggest highlight of the entire Invasions mode in my opinion because I like the design of them, it's kind of fun. And yeah, we got one of those to kick off the very first episode of the Invasions mode, and we'll get a couple more at the very end of this episode.
Sindel serves her new Vaternian masters as ruthlessly as she once ruled Outworld. Do not drop your guard for one moment. Given the chance, she will kill you.
Yeah, we're going to be wrapping it up. There will not be a part 3. It's going to be a 2-part playthrough of that Invasions mode for Season 2. And I have not decided if I'm going to be doing a playthrough of Season 3 yet. I have played it, mind you. I don't know if I want to do a whole episode on that, though. And my big quandary with that is I don't really know how much of this is really worth commentating on. Like, it's kind of fun to play through in real person. It's definitely a grind, but it's not, like, unenjoyable. But whenever I go back and I edit these videos, like, I love highlighting some of the bigger bosses because they do introduce some interesting mechanics whenever it comes to trying to beat them. But most of it is just me beating these filler fights, and again, there are like hundreds of them. And I usually find myself condensing about 6 or 7 hours worth of gameplay into like maybe an hour and a half of a video that I eventually will post on YouTube or something. So I don't really know if I want to do that again. I could be using that time on something else. I don't know, I haven't decided, but we will see what happens. But enough about that. Right now I am facing off against this stage's boss, Sindel. Or at least the brutal Queen Sindel, which I guess is one of the blood curse infected individuals that Nitara has taken some sort of control over or gained some sort of influence over. And when I say Nitara, I mean the alternate dimension Nitara that is invading. I also happen to be using Nitara as the character I am using to play through the Invasions mode, so that might be maybe kind of confusing if I don't actually point that out. But yeah, this is supposed to be, I believe, this dimension's Nitara that I am controlling, so at the very end, expect a Nitara versus Nitara battle where we get to see who is the better vampire. Yeah, originally I thought that'd be kind of a fun concept, using the same character to defeat their alternate dimension self, although I'm realizing now in hindsight that it makes commentating a little bit awkward because I'm trying to describe this character that we're trying to defeat while also using that character. So maybe I'll try to avoid using the exact same character as the Invasions boss next time. It seemed like a fun idea at the time, though, so no regrets there. Alright, let's go ahead and wrap this fight up, and okay. So this boss battle has at least 3 stages, which I think is the first time that has happened since Raiden in the very first level? Maybe I'm mistaken, it has been, like, days between recordings, but I don't think very many of the bosses I have faced so far this season have actually come in more than 2 phases. So I was just expecting this match to be over, but you know what? Why not? Sure. We're going to go ahead into stage 3 and maybe there's a 4 and we're going to find some way to defeat this alternate dimension Sindel, which I keep saying like they're blood cursed or something like that. I don't think that they have been infected as vampires. I can't remember if in the Mortal Kombat mythology that vampires, I don't remember if they can infect regular people with vampirism or if they have to be born as vampires, like they're their own species. So I'm not really sure if it's just a like, blood curse or if they're like vampire versions of themselves. I don't think they're vampire versions of themselves, but I could be wrong. And if you are wondering why I'm dragging this fight out instead of just ending it, considering that Sindel's life is very, very low, that is because I have had this running checklist of finishers for the characters I'm using, and I'm trying to complete the list. Right now, I believe the only finisher I need for Nitara to complete that list is the Something You Ate Brutality, which is the brutality version of that spit she does. So I'm trying to finish the match with that, but I believe I have to meter burn that in order for the brutality to hit. I might be wrong about that, I actually don't remember. But that's why I have been dragging this fight out instead of just ending it and then proceeding on with this playthrough. Unfortunately, I do not get that brutality here against Sindel, so I end up wasting a lot of time on this, and that's, unfortunate. I'd much rather be doing something else instead of being stuck on this boss, but I was really motivated to try completing my list, and I had a running list for both Nitara and the cameo Subzero. And I've done just about everything that I can do finisher-wise for those characters. In the end, I believe there's only one brutality left for both of them, one of which would be Nitara's, oh, I just said it, what was it? Something You Ate brutality. And then there's another one for Subzero as well, his second brutality, and I don't even know what that one is, I've never unlocked it before. Gee whiz, I still have to get that even in my Fatal Friday series. But I felt like that would add some entertainment value to this playthrough, just give me something a little bit extra to try showing off, and then a little bit of a goal to try and achieve. Especially since the finishers in Mortal Kombat are some of the most unique things that this game has to offer. And certainly some of the most gory and entertaining. Alright, and we have done it! With one step through a portal and one overhead view of the entire surrounding area, we have entered the final level of the Invasions mode for Season 2. So this final level is referred to as the Ramparts. And here we are going to be facing off against the alternate dimension version of ourselves, the other Nitara. And this is actually the very first time that this level has been available to us in any of the seasons of the Invasion mode. It was not available whatsoever back in Season 1, although it will see a return in Season 3. But enough about Season 3, we are still on Season 2, and I'm going to enjoy this like I did the very first time I was here. And yeah, snowy, cold, and full of dead bodies. Cool, excellent decoration choices. I guess that's one of the downsides to this being a vampire-related season. You just end up with dead bodies and blood everywhere. Which I guess kind of doesn't make sense for vampires because they drink blood. And with that in mind, just leaving blood everywhere seems very, very wasteful. It's kind of hard to make the deceased from a vampire attack more distinguishable than the deceased from pretty much anything else. I suppose you could have given them a bunch of neck wounds, but yeah, back in Season 1, they did kind of the same thing with the very last stage for the Invasions mode. And that was at the Fire Temple, and pretty much everyone who was deceased in the surrounding area was on fire. And that's because Scorpion killed them, the guy that can control Hellfire. So that was very thematically appropriate. Here, it's a little bit harder to distinguish these as Nitara-specific kills, so that's a bit of a bummer. I suppose there's a little bit more they could have done, but it's not bad. It just kind of lacks that vampire-specific feeling. I don't really know necessarily what that feeling would be. Like I said, maybe some neck wounds, some teeth holes in necks where blood was drained, but that's about all that's coming to my mind at the moment. You know what? We need to strike a vibe of the really early Universal monster movie characters like Dracula, okay? We need some really generic coffins around here. I'm going to need some vampire assistant around here, a Renfield-like character, okay? We need to get very classic vampire in this motherfucker, all right? We're going to make it very, very interesting. Actually, you know what? I forgot I am an indecisive person and I have already changed my mind on this topic. I no longer want the universal Dracula. I want the hammer Dracula from the 50s. And pretty much the only reason I want that is so that while we are traveling through the rampart, I can have a Christopher Lee Dracula show up and be like, "You will not get anywhere near Nitara, mwahahaha." And then we end up killing the Christopher Lee Dracula. Or better yet, what I would love, I want a Christopher Lee Dracula team up with us. We're going to go after Nitara because he is not a fan of her leadership style or something like that. Give me that. That's the cameo fighter we all truly need in Mortal Kombat 1. We need Christopher Lee Dracula. And now that I am done gushing about the old classic monsters from the Universal and Hammer days, we are fighting against a mini-boss version of Reiko, just labeled as the General. The thing is, unlike some of the other mini-bosses and stage bosses we have fought, he is not in the outfit of somebody that is infected with the blood curse or blood infection or whatever the hell it is. He's actually looking kind of normal, just in white and red clothing. So I think this is just a regular human Reiko. So now I'm imagining to myself, what if this is the Reiko from an alternate dimension, and he's basically filling the Van Helsing role. He is trying to go after the vampires. And then we just got in his way because we didn't stop to ask him what the hell he was doing. And the game doesn't explain why we're fighting him. I think we are fucking over the vampire hunter. This is Reiko Vampire Hunter. Reiko Van Helsing. And now we're going to end up killing him when we could have been allies the whole time. See, this is the problem with this mode. We never stop to ask anybody what they're doing and why they're doing it. We could be making friends the entire time. Granted, this is Mortal Kombat, so it's going to be super murdery, fatality, brutality friends, but friends nonetheless. And gee whiz, the very next mini-boss after this is going to be Havik, and then you get the big boss herself, Nitara. So if we're going to continue these comparisons, Reiko is Van Helsing, and then you have Havik, who is like a blood priest or something for Nitara. So he is basically her assistant, which would make Havik the Renfield character here. And then you have Nitara herself doing her very best Dracula impression. So yeah, we are hitting all of the roles of a classic Dracula movie. And yeah, this fight against Reiko is taking a pretty exceptionally long amount of time to finish. So with not a great deal of time left on the clock, I don't think I am actually going to be able to defeat him by depleting his health. I think I'm just going to have to injure him as much as I can and try to keep my health up, which with Nitara, that's not really that difficult to do. After all, she can just do blood sacrifice and go into quick taste and then get some of her health back. But yeah, I think this strategy here is do not actually defeat Reiko by depleting health. Instead, let's deplete the clock. Let's try to beat him with a timeout. That's not the most exciting thing in the world, but yeah, I really don't think that we're going to be able to finish this guy off in the traditional sense. Oh well, though, a win is a win, even if it is a timeout. I will take it, and then we will be one step closer to finishing the invasions mode. Which, I'm not going to complain too much about this last level, because we have the Reiko boss, we have the Havik boss, we have the Nitara boss, and we also have to go after a key item, which is being guarded by a geras somewhere on this map. So you get 4 major fights on this last level, which is not bad. It's definitely a lot more and a lot better than some of the others. Like, I think there are only like 2 major fights in the entire Shang Tsung's laboratory area that we just breezed through in like 5 minutes. So I'll take this. This is an improvement. And I think that would have helped this mode quite a bit. Just a lot more meaningful fights. And I joked around earlier, just making a bunch of random comparison to old monster movies, but had they actually even had some text or some voice actor dialogue that kind of implied just random Mortal Kombat characters taking up generic Universal or Hammer monster roles, I'd be thrilled with that. It'd be a hell of a lot better than what we're doing, which is just doing random fights against people and we do not even know why we are fighting them. So yeah, give me some of that. I'll be very, very happy. More meaningful fights and even some joking around dialogue would be a hell of a lot better than what we are getting. It'd be fun. I'd be enjoying it. And then eventually the same thing's going to happen that always happens in a Mortal Kombat game. Someone's basically going to get their head ripped off, cut in half, burned to death, froze to death. You know, all the usual goodies. Alright, and I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but now it is time to go against the very next mini-boss on this stage. We are fighting Mr. Renfield himself, or excuse me, we are fighting Havik, the alternate dimension blood cleric, blood priest, whatever the hell he is in his weird role for Nitara, Havik. Hopefully this time around we will not have to resort to another lead the clock tactic where we just try to beat the opponent with a timeout. I do think that he has some resistance to blood-related attacks, which I don't think that's going to be too big of an issue. After all, I invest as much as I can into just the strength stat, which is going to boost up your regular attacks. And while Nitara as a vampire is a blood type and has blood type attacks, most of those I believe are her special attacks. And I only really do those to extend the combos, so I'm still going to be hitting the opponent with some pretty big moves, some regular combos. So fingers crossed, we're actually going to be able to defeat the opponent without having to wait like 5 minutes. No guarantees, but we will see. And yeah, there's no doubt in my mind whatsoever. This is going much easier than the previous fight, at least when it comes to the damage scaling. I'm doing way more damage to Havik than I was doing to Reiko. Or, you know, if we want to continue with the gimmick, I'm doing way more damage to Renfield than I was doing to Van Helsing. So there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that we will be able to deplete all of Havik's health and be able to maybe, finally, cross everything off of at least one of the finisher lists for either Nitara or the cameo Subzero. That is assuming, of course, that the next phase, or one of the many phases for Havik, isn't something exceptionally difficult and screws me over to the point to where I have to go level up or reevaluate how I need to fight this fight. So fingers crossed, none of that crap happens and everything just continues to go very smoothly. So I do have a genuine question to anybody who may stumble upon this video someday. Is there ever an explanation for why Havik can self-mutilate, like rip off his arm and then grow another arm, or rip off his head and then grow his head back? Is there ever an explanation for how or why that occurs? And the reason I bring that up, because I feel like there is a very simple solution to the very thing that Nitara wants for all of Eternus. Like, if I remember correctly, their big struggle is they want a renewable source of food, which, as vampires, is blood. So they want renewable blood resources. But then you have this guy right here who can regrow limbs, so he can replenish his blood depending on the injury. It seems like Nitara and the rest of the Vaternian vampire people, they should be studying Havik, because he has all the renewable blood in the world, seemingly, if he can just rip off all of his limbs whenever he wants and then grow them back. You have a renewable resource for food right there. Havik, I hope they never figure that out for your sake, and if they do, you might want to run as far away as you can, but then again, being the cleric of chaos, you might find that very chaotic and very enjoyable, so you know what, do you, man. Whatever happens, happens, and I hope it works out for you. And it is at this point I begin to realize that I can expand upon this whole comparison I've been kind of jokingly making between the old Universal and Hammer monsters and the Mortal Kombat cast. Because I already called Havik Renfield, I already called Reiko Van Helsing, and I'm referring to Nitara as kind of a version of Dracula. So, with that in mind, I realized that Mortal Kombat has already kind of made this joke in a way. In previous games, they had alternate character skins that happened to be classic monsters. Like, I believe that Geras was Frankenstein's monster, or at least one of his alternate skins was. I believe Reptile at one point was the creature from the Black Lagoon, although I might have that a little bit mixed up. And I don't know that we've gotten any sort of Wolfman skin for anybody, but it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if one happened to exist somewhere in the world. Actually, no, wait, I completely forgot about this, but back in, I think, Mortal Kombat 11, Johnny Cage had like a teen wolf skin, so Johnny Cage has been a werewolf in one of the games, depending on, you know, his alternate costume that you gave him. So yeah, we have a Wolfman, it was Johnny Cage. And even though he's just a cameo fighter in this game, we do have Kano, who has the half of his face being cybernetic, so he has a half-face gimmick. We could make him like the Phantom of the Opera or something like that. So yeah, the gimmick was definitely there, considering that Reptile and Geras are actually in this game as well, so it would have been kind of cool to see those skins make a bit of a comeback. And eventually we're going to have to branch out a little bit too, because then you have a character like Smoke who can go invisible. I know Reptile can go invisible too, but Reptile's already the creature from the Black Lagoon. So since smoke can go invisible, we have our invisible man. I don't know who our Bride of Frankenstein would be, but we should definitely go for that as well. Actually, yeah, we do. Of course we do. Like, the Bride of Frankenstein has the crazy stand-up straight to the air hair that is black and white. We already have Sindel, the person who can control her hair. So yeah, Sindel needs to be the Bride of Frankenstein. So the groundwork is there. We can make a bunch of other characters, some classic monsters too. This season could have been kind of amazing. But, well, we just get a bunch of random fights with very little dialogue, and we eventually fight through enough of them to fight the big bad boss, and then it's over. I don't know. I would have loved some sort of a classic monster gimmick to this. I'm just ranting because it's a pretty long video and I have plenty of time to kill, but since I'm just screwing around and talking about it, this sounds like it could have been a very fun idea. And of course, WB and Universal are not the same thing, so there might be some reasons why they couldn't blatantly say these characters are, classic monster characters. But you can kind of make the nod or the implication without actually saying they are what they are, and the joke could kind of still land. I don't know. It would have been cool to see. I would have enjoyed it. It would have been fun. Alright, and similar to what we did when we were fighting Sindel, we are going to go for the something you ate brutality. I am determined to get it. Let's make this thing happen. And there it is, there it was, whatever, we did it. That was the something you ate brutality. We execute that by doing Nitara's blood spit attack, and then, well, I guess that breath was so bad that blood just starts spitting out of their ears, eyes, mouth, nose, pretty much everywhere, and then the opponent dies. And just like that, we managed to do it. We checked every single finisher off of Nitara's list. So throughout this entire playthrough of Season 2 for the Invasions mode, we did it. We got every single finisher for Nitara. Now, it's not a perfect victory because I was also trying to get all of the finishers for the cameo Subzero. But there was a bit of a problem I encountered when trying to do that. The problem I encountered was that when we were trying to level up the cameo Subzero, well, the cameo experience works a little bit different than the experience for a main roster character. And what I mean by that is they level up much, much slower. So, despite the fact that I spent about 6 or 7 hours playing through the Invasions mode and only using these two characters, by the time it was all over, I did not level up the cameo Subzero enough to unlock his second finisher, or his second brutality, excuse me. And since I was unable to get him leveled up enough despite playing that long, we do not get the opportunity to see the cameo Subzero's second brutality in this playthrough. That is a bummer and also a really questionable choice. Like, that is a lot of grinding just to play through all the Invasions mode, and despite all of the grinding, it's still not enough. I feel like the designers for this game really need to tweak the experience that a cameo fighter receives whenever you are playing through these modes and, doing everything they want you to do, doing the finishers and trying to get the flawless victories, all that good stuff. Because, wow, that is an exceptionally long amount of time and a very large amount of fights to do with one cameo fighter, and you still don't have everything you need to do their finishers. And especially if you just casually play the game like I do, where you only bust out every now and then, basically at the beginning or the end of a season, trying to level up your cameo fighters all the way as high as they need to go in order for you to get all their finishers so you can highlight them as you want them to. Well, executing those becomes a real chore when you have to try and spend that much time unlocking them, which is not ideal. Now, granted, you have to earn, finishers and things like that. That's fine, I get that. There's no real point in giving you everything right off the bat because then there is no real incentive for you to play through the game and really see all that it has to offer. I get that. But this still feels extremely slow to get all of one character's finishers, considering that there's still a whole roster of other cameo fighters that I have to level up and get their stuff for too. I don't know, just a thought. Like, I don't hate the idea of leveling up to earn those things, and the finishers, they're alright, they're cool. Just tweak the experience a little bit, just a little bit. But enough about the finishers, because we are facing off against a random geras here in the final stage for this Invasions mode Season 2. And this random geras is the person we have to defeat in order to get the armory key. Why do we need the armory key? Well, whenever we finished up fighting against Havik, we found that the gate next to his little area was locked and we needed an armory key to get through it. The thing is, there was absolutely no dialogue to even hint at the idea that geras here would have the armory key. And why does geras have the armory key? I don't know. Was he a trusted advisor of some kind for Nitara, and she told him to take the key, run away, don't let them find you, that way I can stay in here and be safe? I don't know. Did Nitara do something silly like lock herself in a room and not be able to get out? So Geras was over here just trying to find the key to get her out, and then he finally found it, and then we show up and we kill him and we steal it? I don't know.
The Vaternians from this other timeline make ours look almost incompetent. They fight harder, smarter, and with unbelievable skill. This new Nitara and her ilk will surely test your might.
This just kind of continues the cycle of there being key items, and by the term key item, you would think that they'd be super important and that you would get some sort of a background on them, but no. You sometimes just stumble upon them without realizing that you needed them, and sometimes you just find a locked door with the indication that you need this key item, and then you just wander around aimlessly until you eventually fight the right person and you get it. The Tarkatan colony, the very last level, did the exact same thing. Only that gate was locked because you needed a random lost foot. Like, why? Like, was there a Tarkatan standing guard who was a little bit hungry and needed a snack? So he went and found him some finger food or toe food or foot food. Wait. There is an opportunity for some wordplay. Hold on. He asked for tofu. We gave him toe food. Right. Okay, and if you are still watching this, thank you, because that was a terrible joke, and that's okay. But the idea here is that for key items, the term key would imply that they would be super important, but they are treated as random drops, basically. I mean, it's not random because you have to go fight a specific enemy for them, but you are randomly going to find them. It just seems like maybe there should be some story or some sort of a background for why you need the item, but no, we're not going to get that. I'm not going to ever figure out how exactly a random lost severed foot opens a gate, but by God it does. Anyway, enough about that. Let's go ahead and get to fighting Nitara and focus on that. Or excuse me, fighting the other Nitara, because I am Nitara, and she is Nitara, but my Nitara is going to win maybe. So far, things are going according to plan. I mentioned this in the previous episode, but I mostly picked a Nitara to go against Nitara because I thought it'd be kind of a fun concept to see which Nitara was the best. But there was a little bit of other motivation that went into that decision. One of which is because blood types resist other blood types, and Nitara was a blood type, so of course she's going to resist herself. That's not a big deal for me because I put everything into strength like I mentioned earlier, so my attacks still hit hard, just not necessarily my special attacks. But that doesn't really matter to me because it's not really what I'm going to be focusing on anyway. Now in the case of the stage boss, or I guess the entire invasion boss Nitara, she uses blood special attacks pretty frequently. So that means I'd be resisting those major attacks while also hitting her very hard. The matchup was an ideal concept on paper, and now that I'm actually doing it, it's being executed pretty well as well. So yeah, the plan is going according to plan. And even adding to the strategy just a little bit, since Sub-Zero can freeze the opponent Nitara if I do things right, I can get blood sacrifices off here and there, and then, well, I just use the quick taste special attack and regain some health. So not only can this other Nitara not hit me hard, I can also regularly get my health back and extend the fight. So the strategy felt pretty sound and, well, it worked. And watching it back now, yeah, it seems like it was going very smoothly. It didn't seem like it took a whole lot of luck or just having everything lined up just right for it to work. It seems like this probably would be a very easily repeatable battle if it were in fact repeatable, but unfortunately, since it was seasonal, this fight is no longer available, so I can't exactly go back and test that theory, but I am very confident that if I were to do this all over again with Nitara, the results would be basically the same. So as I wrap up this fight, let me just go ahead and point out what I believe I am going to do for Season 3 of the Invasions mode, assuming I make a video for it at all. So if I end up doing that, I believe my approach to this is going to be a lot different and a lot shorter. And the reason for that is I really don't feel like there is a whole lot worth seeing currently in the invasions mode. Now, I've only played all the way up to Season 3. Season 4 has not happened yet, so hopefully some of the things that I complain about are fixed with Season 4. But for right now, the strategy or the how do I want to put this? The design of the invasions mode has remained the same all 3 seasons. You wander across a map, you fight hundreds of random, pointless battles, and then you eventually face off against mini bosses and stage bosses, and then at the very end, you face off against the invasion mode boss for that season. So you're wasting about 7 hours of time playing through the entire mode for like 30 minutes worth of quality gameplay. That is kind of hard to make an entertaining or interesting or engaging video about. So I'm thinking that I'm going to focus more around what the invasions mode has deemed important or worth seeing. And what I mean by that is you have a really cool cutscene to start off the invasions mode, and then you get some really cool cutscenes to end the invasions mode. So I'm going to kind of focus on those. I'm going to show off the cutscenes. I'm going to kick off the invasions mode so we get an idea of the gimmick for the invasions mode. And then I think I'm going to skip to the very end and fight the, final boss of that mode. Because nothing important in any of these seasons has happened in the middle. We're just fighting a bunch of random battles trying to get to the very end because that's the only part of the game that actually seems to be given any sort of emphasis. So if that's the only thing the developers cared about enough to actually give you some sort of a quality engagement, something to really look forward to, then I'm just going to skip all the rest and focus on that part. So I think that we're going to go from having like 2 45-minute to 1 hour videos to maybe having like a 30-minute video. I don't know, we will see. I haven't done it yet, but trying to slog through about 7 hours worth of recording to make like a 2-hour video that I start to run out of things to talk about 20 minutes in. That's not fun. That's not ideal. I don't think it's going to be fun to watch later. And it certainly isn't like the most fun thing to do in the moment. We shall see, but that's kind of what I'm playing with in my mind. So at this point during the fight with the final boss Nitara, we have depleted her health on 2 separate occasions and gotten through the 2 first phases against her. We are going into the 3rd phase against Nitara, and I believe that this is the 3rd and final phase. There might be a 4th one, but I think it's only 3. And as long as we get through this one okay, we're going to win the boss battle and everything is going to work out just fine. Then we get to see the final cutscene, and immediately after that cutscene, we'll go into the outro and just try to get everything wrapped up and conclude the video. So in this 3rd and final phase against the boss, the big bad Nitara, she will occasionally go into a fully armored state, and while she is in that mode, she will spit projectiles, bloody projectiles at you, and you can still hit her, it'll still do damage, but you're not going to be able to knock her back or anything due to the armor until that phase is completely over. In addition to that, in this 3rd phase, you can see the raining of blood, and I don't actually think that that does anything other than add some ambiance to the situation. But if you are close to Nitara, similar to other bosses whenever they reach their final phases, she will do proximity damage to you, so she doesn't actually have to hit you to be doing damage over time to you. One addition to that, though, is she's not simply doing damage to you, she is gaining her health back for every bit of damage she does to you. So she's draining your health and replenishing her own. And that's a nice touch, that is very vampire-like. So good choice to add a little bit of challenge to this battle. Fortunately, I can also get my health back with the blood sacrifice and the quick taste attack, so this is not as dire a situation as it might seem. I just have to kind of wait for the right moments and then capitalize on them and get my health back, and this can go on a pretty long time. So even though she can do damage over time to me and then get her health back, I can also kind of do some similar things to her that completely counter that, so it's not as bad as it might sound. Actually, now that I think about it, there was, at least at one point in time, another way to kind of counter the problem that some of these bosses present whenever you get into their later phases. And what I mean by the problem they present, I'm talking about the damage over time. That can be pretty problematic, and it seems to be where At least in my experience, the opponent's going to be able to do the most amount of damage to you because after a while you just get level up to the point to where they're not really able to do too crazy of damage to you without the damage over time. And the way that I found myself sometimes getting around this, at least back in Season 1 and maybe Season 2, it's been a little while so I'm not sure, is your Fatal Blow. At some point, if you were to do your Fatal Blow attack against the opponent, and this is probably a glitch or something like that that they probably patched out at some point, but if you were to land it, I found that the damage over time would stop. It's definitely something that does not strike me as intentional, but it was a way of getting around the problem of having your life drained back at one point in time. Just land the Fatal Blow, the damage over time stops, and suddenly the fight gets a lot easier. Of course, to do that, you have to be below 30% health to begin with, so you're probably already not in the best situation if you're resorting to that tactic, but it could potentially be the difference between winning and losing, at least, like I said, back in like Season 1 or so. And maybe it was just me experiencing that, and it's not such a regular thing that other people experience, but, I mean, who knows? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Let's go ahead and wrap this thing up and see how this season ends. The boss Nitara has been fatality'd, so all that is left for this playthrough is to see how the cutscene for Season 2 concludes everything. Let's check it out.
Though they claim to be superior beings, Nitara and her timeline's Vaternians proved anything but. They foolishly underestimated the tenacity and skill of this timeline's warriors. And while we have lost many, they are sadly not this war's greatest victims. Those are the ones who were enslaved by a pestiferous Vaternian bite, and who, unless aided, will be condemned to languish in an excruciating, eternal twilight. To help them, I travel to a timeline where Vaternians work for good, not ill. They graciously share their unique expertise, undoing the dark magic that had befallen my champions. Now, their souls and their lives have been restored. Their safe return is indeed a blessing.
Well, okay, I can admit when I was wrong, and in this case I definitely was. Earlier I mentioned that I thought that this blood curse or blood infestation, whatever, that the other characters were getting from the invading Nitara was just a way of controlling them. I did not think it was turning them into vampires, but according to that last cutscene, well, Nitara was just turning them into vampires. So I was definitely wrong about that. My bad. We got clarification though. Anyway, that is going to be it for the Invasions mode for Season 2. We got to see all the cutscenes. We got confirmation that the invading Nitara was burned alive by Liu Kang. And in the end, all of the allies who were turned into vampires by that invading force, well, they were cured by another version of Nitara from another universe. So it all works out in the end, and now we can go ahead and wrap everything up. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to check out some of the other stuff on my Thor's Entertainment channel. I do have a bunch of other Mortal Kombat related videos. I like to do the Fatality and Brutality hunting online in the Mortal Kombat Combat League. And I have those videos on the Mortal Kombat 1 online playlist. And I also have playthroughs of story modes for other Mortal Kombat games. But with all of this out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this already long episode. Again, thank you for watching, take care, and I will see you next time.